Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Margaret Drinkwine, member of the Board of Trustees, and it's always a pleasure to be up here welcoming people on a Sunday morning. It's always a pleasure to hear people chatting and hear the community. There is, after service today, a Yule Bach down in Conover. If you don't know where it is, it's to the left as you enter. It's hosted by the Construction Task Force, and feel free to come down and enjoy the food and find out what's happening. Sorry. If you got here too late to see all the announcements, the video announcements, please feel free to take the insert from your order of service. It has a lot of the announcements in it. If you don't particularly want the cover, we actually do reuse that every week, so it will help us if you leave that behind unless you want something on the cover as well. Our candle today is lit in honor of Richard Lewin, and with sadness we report that as a longtime member, he died on Sunday. His wife, Jean, is in the hospital recovering from pneumonia and expects to go home soon. A private memorial service is planned, and plans for a public service are yet to be determined. Cards and calls from All Souls friends are welcome. And our thoughts are also with David Haken today, whose father died this past week. And I'll turn it over to Josh for visitors.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's good to see you all today. My name is Josh Paskowitz, and I'm the membership coordinator here. And before we get our main service started this morning, it's always our pleasure to welcome any new guests or visitors that may be in the audience today. So, do we have any members that have brought anyone with them today that they'd like to introduce? And how about any members that have met a visitor that you could introduce? I see back here.
I've been a member, now I'm a visitor. David Curry, Springfield, Missouri. Member, first few down there.
Wonderful, wonderful. Do we have? You stand?
Yeah, I'm Marty Kerr. I'm a member. A friend of mine, who's a colleague of Bill Petersdorf, who resides in Lake Bottom.
Wonderful. Well, welcome. Please.
Hi, I'm Richard Thompson. I actually remember this church, but it's been an awful long time since I've been here. I went to the zoo at the for a while. So.
Great. Well, welcome. In front here.
Peter Holmes, we are visiting from Columbia Unitarian Church in Missouri.
Well, we're happy to have you. Welcome. Any other visitors that would like to introduce yourselves today? All right. Well, regardless, thank you for being here. In addition to the Yule Bach that's happening directly after service, the membership committee is holding a new member orientation today, and we'll be covering the topic of elevator speeches and how to explain Unitarian Universalism to your friends and family in a concise manner, and that will be held in Grace Hill Library. And so actually, the membership committee is going to be escorting any visitors or members even who would like to attend that session through the Yule Bach line, and we'll take our food into the library and we'll eat as we hold that session. Additionally, we welcome your comments and questions on our social media platforms and outlets after the service, and if you have any questions at any time, we always have the hospitality table in the library, so the membership committee is happy to meet any new members and guests that have any questions. So the last thing I have to remind everybody of, in the event of an emergency, in addition to the doors behind you, we do have 2 emergency exits on either side of the stage. So thank you all for being here this morning.
So good morning, and once again, welcome to this hour of reflection and accountability here among the covenant community of memory and promise. Let us come into the inner space of honesty, humility, and gratitude with these words from my colleague, Reverend Jan Tadeo. Great Spirit of life, Wakantanka, Creator known and unknown, called by many names and no names, holy oneness of all that is, was, and ever will be. On this day, thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of people across the globe pray in solidarity with the Standing Rock Sioux, with the water protectors, those who have declared enough. We give honor and gratitude for the water protectors, for their commitment to protect the waters of the Missouri and Mississippi rivers from contamination and exploitation. Water does not belong to humans. Water belongs to all of life. We give honor and gratitude for the soil protectors, for all who strive to keep the sacred lands set aside for the indigenous people of this continent safe from invasion and destruction. Earth does not belong to humans. Soil is for all life on our planet to share. We give honor and gratitude for the air protectors, for those who diligently work to make our air clean and healthy, protected from polluting gases and emissions. The air does not belong to humans. Air is essential for all life on our planet. We give honor and gratitude for the fire protectors, for those who commit their hearts and souls to protecting our atmosphere, that we may be adequately shielded from the heat of the sun. Fire is a force for good and a force that can destroy. Humans have the power to choose the fate of our planet. We give respect and thanks for the Standing Rock Sioux and all the tribes who have gathered in solidarity to take once again a stand against genocide, oppression, and white supremacy. We give respect and thanks for the thousands of veterans who gathered last week at the Oseti-Sakowin camp on the Standing Rock Reservation, for their courage to protect the water protectors, for their solidarity in defending the waters of this nation. We give respect and thanks for the thousands of clergy, laity, and concerned citizens who have gathered over the past months in peaceful prayer at Standing Rock and in cities across the globe. We arise in solidarity with all who are lighting candles, offering prayers, and standing vigil, working for and awaiting a peaceful resolution that will ensure protection for clean waters, sacred soil, healthy air, and a sustainable planet. May we pray with our hands and feet, each doing what we can to walk softly upon this earth for the benefit of all life, and to give back more than we receive. Ashe, Amen, Aho, Mitakuyasin. In solidarity with the 7 sacred fires of Oseti-Sakowin, we kindle our own sacred chalice flame. May it illuminate our connections with all people, all beings, and the source of all life, which calls upon us now and always for deeds of justice, compassion, and peace.
Good morning, my name is Ruby Shello. I light this chalice for respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part.
Thank you, Ruby. Now let's rise together in body or spirit and speak again the words of our community's covenant. Together we affirm, goodwill is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Now let's remain standing for our opening hymn, and we will do this 4 times, one for each direction.
Ancient Mother, I hear you calling. Ancient Mother, I hear your song. Ancient Mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient Mother, I taste your tears. Ancient Mother, I hear you calling. Ancient Mother, I hear your song. Ancient Mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient Mother, I taste your tears. Ancient Mother, I hear you calling. Ancient Mother, I hear your song. Ancient Mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient Mother, I taste your tears. Ancient Mother, I hear you calling. Ancient Mother, I hear your song. Ancient Mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient Mother, I taste your tears.
As we continue in this time of Advent, awaiting the coming of the solstice of Christmas, the turning of the year toward gathering light, we come together to share our journeys and our hopes. And so today we invite everyone, young and old, to write a wish for the coming year on an Advent star and hang it on the branches that are out in the foyer. The more stars, the more beauty, the more hope. As 2017 begins, we will each take home a star and cherish that hope on someone else's behalf throughout the year. In these ways, we build our community by keeping space for each other's wishes and by setting aside this time in our gathering to share the joys and concerns which are now shaping our lives. Cassie and Zach, would you come forward and light our Advent candles? Hang on. There you go. You're going to do the first one. Yep, that's right. Perfect. Can you blow this one out? Good. Oops. Almost. Let's try it. Okay, thank you. Good job. And now, as we affirm our commitment to human fellowship by opening ourselves to rejoice with those who are glad and to weep with those who mourn, may the beauty and sweetness of these brief flowers remind us to hold one another in the bonds of sympathy, encouragement, and care. I place this first flower in honor of my colleague Patrick Rhodes, who is a member of the Concerned Clergy Coalition and of the Breathe team. He's retired and relocated, and so we will not be seeing him anymore, but my thoughts go with him. He was very kind to me when I was new in Kansas City, and I'll miss him. Are there other joys or concerns to be shared today? Jeff?
I wanted to lift up, and I have great admiration for all of the people who went to Dakota or who already were in Dakota and stood up for what they believed with apparently, at least temporarily, a good outcome and a good success. But I think that it's really incumbent upon us to stick with what we believe in this time and continue to work towards our goals, especially in preserving the earth.
Thank you. Perfect. Yes, please. Thanks, Jeff. Thought I saw some other people. Oh, Ellie, come on up.
I have a joy that despite the trauma of the past month, that most of us are still here and able to come together and talk to each other and do some good work.
Excellent. Me too. I have a flower. Yeah. Other joys or concerns? Don't be shy. Come on up.
Sarah and Shane and I have an old classmate who had recently had a stroke and was not expected to speak afterwards. And this morning it was reported that she was speaking and sipping on ice chips, and I think that's really fantastic.
Oh, lovely news. Thank you. Other joys or concerns? Okay. You like to keep me in suspense. I can see this.
I guess you'd call this a concern. My father passed away this past April, so this is going to be my first holiday season with just my mom.
Yeah. We're here. Any other? Yep. Come on up.
Hi, my grandfather has Alzheimer's, and my grandmother had to have her hip removed actually a couple years back, but my heart goes out to them. I hope they're all right.
Yes. Thank you for telling us. Actually, the flower goes in the vase. Right. Takes a while to get this down. Hi.
This would be a joy. I'm really glad this week I've seen a lot of journalists really speaking out about everything that's going on, and it gives me hope that we can make it through these next 4 years.
Thank you, yeah.
This is sort of in the same vein, but due to the elections and stuff, I find that our dwelling together in peace, seeking the truth and love, and helping one another means more than ever. I have a joy that there are so many people here and other people I see that are dedicated to being the firewall for the danger that we sort of see on the horizon that we refuse to accept.
Right.
Thank you.
Amen. Thank you. What else? Yeah. Kari, is that you? Come on up.
a joy, and it's my dad's going on a business trip to Europe, and he's going to see a castle.
Cool. All right. Is he going to send you pictures?
I hope so.
Okay. Good deal. Next time he has to take you, right? Hey, Cassie, you have a joy?
I'm happy that I get to go to Seattle and see my family there.
You going for Christmas? Excellent. That's great news. Do you want to, hey, Cassie, take a flower. Pick one. It's a hard choice. Yeah, that's a good one. Help us out. Make a pretty bouquet there. Isn't that a girl? Yeah. Well done. Thank you.
Maybe we should have one to put in the vase and one to keep.
Yeah. All right. My flower budget's going up if you do that. Anybody else? If not, then I will place one additional flower for the outreachings of the Spirit that abide unspoken in our hearts, and invite you to join together in the congregational response that will be appearing on the screen. And so this is divided up. We'll start with all, and then right will be your right, and left will be your left as they come up on the screen. So together, this is a prayer for all the travelers, for the ones who start out in beauty, who fall from grace, who step gingerly, looking for the way back, and for those who are born into the margins, who travel from one liminal space to another, crossing boundaries in search of center. For all the travelers, young and old, aching and joyful, weary and full of life, the ones who are here and the ones who are not here, the ones who are like you, and they're all like you, and the ones who are different, for in some ways we each travel alone. This is a prayer for traveling mercies, for sure-footedness, for bread for your body and spirit, for water, for your safe arrival, and for everyone you see along the way. And now our children will gather in their classes, and we will release them with song. I'm back. Those of you who know me know that one of the parts of my life is a very deep yoga practice. And in yoga, we talk about centering, about listening to our inner teacher. In some ways, I feel when I come here on Sundays, this is part of my centering, a very important part of my life. Like many of you, I started coming just weekly to services and sometimes to forum, and spent the week afterwards musing over what I'd heard in service, and spent the service also being bathed in the wonderful music that Anthony and Sarah bring to us. Over time, I got the courage to go and attend a couple of committees. And if any of you have ever looked at the calendar or walked down the hall in an evening or an afternoon after church, it's amazing how busy this place is, between committees and groups that have been sponsored by members that are consistent with our mission. This place is amazing. Eventually, all this led me to the Board of Trustees. And as a member of the board, I know how much
we struggle every year to come up with a realistic budget based on our pledge income and what we feel that we can raise with fundraising, what we have to let go of that we'd love to stretch to do. And I think being on the board actually also made me stretch to pledge a little bit more. But in spite of our best efforts to budget, we have unforeseen costs as well that come up. As many of you know, 3 weeks of the month, our collection goes to organizations that are consistent with our mission. But 1 weekend a month, our collection goes to our operating fund. So I encourage you to be as generous as you can to help support the work of this church. It takes a lot of people to keep this place open, to keep it looking good, to support all these groups that meet here, to support all of us. The morning offering will now be given and gratefully received.
Will you join me in the words of dedication? We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create a just and compassionate society. In late October, the Reverend John Floberg, supervising priest of the Episcopal Church on the North Dakota side of Standing Rock, in connection with Clergy for Climate Action, called clergy to Standing Rock from November 2nd to 4th, 2016, in solidarity, prayer, and action. Over 500 clergy, including over 50 Unitarian Universalists, answered that call. While in North Dakota, Nora Rassman from Standing on the Side of Love sat down with Ronya Hoblet, acting director of the Native American Training Institute and member of the UU Church, as well as Reverend Karen Van Fossen, minister of the UU Fellowship and Church of Bismarck-Mandan, to learn more about the engagement of their congregation in support of Standing Rock and ways that UUs throughout the country can support the work of the water protectors there. Nora began by asking, I have only been here for a few days, but I appreciate what has looked to be an organic and transformative relationship that has emerged between your congregation and the folks at Standing Rock. Can you tell us a little about how you and your congregation became involved with Standing Rock?
Ronnie answered, I first visited when it was sacred stone. We knew there were needs. I got up in front of the congregation and asked if folks could donate any paper goods for the kitchen. People were very kind and generous in the congregation. The movement in Standing Rock grew quickly, and the engagement at the church with Standing Rock grew parallel and with similar speed. People here are donating without any self-glory. They're not focused on asking for recognition. In the past, there'd be a beginning and end to our engagement, and whoever donated would have felt good about it. With this work, it's like you can touch the bottom. You know where you are, you know the goal, you know your place in this much bigger movement. When I use water now, this has shifted my relationship. When I use water, and every time I let it run, I see my granddaughter in the water, and her not having that water. I save a drop of water, and it means someone isn't going to have to ask for that. So I have to work for it now, for that future.
Karen added, we're talking about this new experience of water. So often I think about it like, hey, I'm drinking the Missouri River right now. But now, because I've been in a place to protect this water, I have such a different relationship to it. Being at water ceremony last week, being with the people at the water, that grief, gratitude, exhaustion, and sense of hope ran right through me. Standing Rock has facilitated a reflection between giving up and giving over something of myself. In the process, even though my experience is still about me, it's in really a different way. When I see the Dakota Access Pipeline moving along the land, it takes everything in me not to go stop it. I have always loved that river. There's a way I feel membership in the world in a deeper way now. From what I have experienced from traditional Lakota values, what I've learned through Rania and through folks here at the camp, this is a space that has been created that if you are hungry, you can eat. If you are thirsty, there is water. If you are hurt, there is a clinic. There is always space at the fire for you. There is always prayer. These are things that are given to each of us. I have lived in different places in my life. I've been accustomed to chronic loneliness. I've known pervasive chronic loneliness, and that's gone.
Nora asked, when you think about what you have witnessed and experienced at Standing Rock, what does it mean to follow Indigenous leadership in your work? How do you see your work as a congregation as supporting or fortifying an Indigenous-led movement?
Rania commented, there's such a long history of abuse. The church has been, along with the records to prove it, such a long-time perpetrator. There's a little conflict there. The people who have shown up in Standing Rock have love in their hearts and have illustrated a general sense of respect. In general, they're not here to appropriate our experiences, but also understand that the tribe is comfortable being the spearhead with others supporting us. It's good to have people of faith involved with the movement. Civil disobedience is not something people can or should go into lightly. We're thankful for any and all support that's showing up at Standing Rock. It's so powerful to see so many people showing up in support.
Karen replied, what I got from this, from what you're saying, Rania, is that yes, we need to go forward. And there is all this at the same time. That all of this exists in the context of doctrine of discovery. I think that work has something to do with why Unitarian Universalism was able and willing to show up at this time. And it's not to say that systems of oppression are not still in place, and some of us are still benefiting from them. If we're going to have integrity about this whole history behind this movement, we must be in solidarity with Standing Rock. For me, it is really important to see that just because I am in solidarity doesn't mean every space is for me. When I see people doing things like songs, dance, and prayer that are not mine, I just get to be invited as a witness. It is also important that I remember the grief that I feel is not the job of Native people to take care of, so that folks directly impacted don't end up having to hold that from me. Sharing space is a function of our relationships. It is a gift. I often say I receive more than I give. That is indeed true.
Rania concluded, when you set your foot in the camp, you have to trust that folks will take care of you and that we are taking care of each other. At camp, when tribes have come who are historical enemies, like the Lakota welcoming the Crow, that is so profound. That made it okay for anybody to come into the camp. No one enters the camp without having made some sort of sacrifice in their life, and that matters. I hope and guess that everybody goes away knowing that it is a gift to be able to be part of it. No one's excluded from this. Rocks, air, land, humans, we all have a connection to water. We can't ignore the edges. We must bring them to the center.
Far beyond the grasp of hands, or light to meet the eye, past the reaches of the mind, there find the key to nature's harmony, in an architecture so entwined. Like the birds who patterns grace the sky and carry all who join in love expanding, the message of peace will rise in flight, taking the weight of the world upon its wings, in the oneness of everything. Peace is in the dance of trees who stir before the first breath of wind is yet perceived. Trust in the song becoming one with the dance, and all mysteries can be believed. Songs of lives long past the touch our own are written in the earth, ever giving, and now to maintain the harmony gives to us all lives with living, for the oneness of everything. Still we seek to find a truth that we might understand and reduce to terms defined. Vast and immeasurable time and space, and so overwhelmingly designed. to feel the pulse of life enters my soul as a song to sing of the oneness of everything, of the oneness of everything.
Let me say it first, as I will say it last. This is not over yet. As you probably know, there has been good news from Standing Rock this week, and good reason to celebrate for the moment. It's winter in North Dakota, which is no time for a campout, and folks are going home mostly. The Army Corps of Engineers, under direction from the twilight of the Obama administration, has rescinded its approval for construction of a 30-inch diameter crude oil pipeline that was intended to carry between 470 and 570,000 barrels of oil daily from the Bakken and Three Forks production areas in North Dakota to Patoka, Illinois, to link with other existing pipelines. As proposed, this pipeline would have cut through lands of historical and religious significance to the Sioux tribes and run under the Missouri River and Lake Oahe, where any break or spill would have permanently contaminated the natural water supply as well as the sacred sites. Where does it all start? Does it start back when our attention was captured back in September or October, when we began hearing about the camp at Standing Rock, the protests, the requests for support, when we all started to ask, what's going on in North Dakota anyway? But of course, you have to go back earlier than that. Perhaps to late July, when the Standing Rock Sioux tribe filed a lawsuit in federal court against the Army Corps of Engineers, charging that granting permits for a crude oil pipeline through treaty lands and under the Missouri River at Lake Oahe violated the Clean Water Act, the National Historic Protection Act, and the National Environmental Policy Act. A flurry of legal maneuvering between Dakota Access Pipeline LLC, often referred to as DAPL, and the tribe sought to allow or prevent continuing work on the pipeline during the time that the original lawsuit was pending. DAPL made a determined effort to render the tribe's request moot by simply completing construction, either before injunctions were issued or in spite of those injunctions. That's when public protests and physical confrontations began, as tribal members, particularly tribal youth and their supporters, attempted to prevent continuing construction until such time as the legal challenges had been resolved. But consider going back to May 2014, when the initial proposals for the pipeline presented a route that crossed the Missouri River north of the state capital of Bismarck, North Dakota. By September of that year, a few months later, the proposal had been rerouted to tribal land for a variety of reasons, including less mileage, fewer roadway, river, and wetland crossings, as well as less difficulty avoiding houses and municipal water supply sources. While it is not true that this change was made because of objections on the part of the white citizens in Bismarck, there was in fact little public awareness of the plan at that point at all. It does seem clear that one factor in DAPL's planning was a sensitivity to the potential impact of pipeline accidents on homes and water supplies in the city, defined as a high consequence area. Such potential impact was considered negligible on the sacred burial grounds and water supply of the Standing Rock tribe. Or you could go back to 1992, when federal law established the right of Native American tribes to be consulted about plans by federal agencies to undertake or approve construction projects on or near any lands that the tribe considers to be of sacred or archaeological significance to its history. In the expedited process by which the Army Corps of Engineers approved the DAPL plan, this consultation with the Standing Rock Sioux did not take place. Moreover, this past October, when the tribe identified to the court evidence for burial sites that would be of both historic and sacred significance, the DAPL construction crews proceeded to deliberately and wantonly destroy those specific sites in an effort to prevent a legal decision protecting them. Or you could go back to 1980, when the Supreme Court ruled that the entire Black Hills area was unjustly seized from the Sioux in the first place and ordered the government to pay appropriate reparations. The tribes, however, have been steadfast in refusing this money, insisting that possession of the land itself, or at least some form of co-ownership and shared control, is the only real justice possible. You could go back a century before that, when the U.S. government, incited by rumors of gold to be found in the Black Hills, conducted what was called the Great Sioux War, in abrogation of the 1868 Treaty of Fort Laramie. That treaty had ended Red Cloud's War and guaranteed the Lakota ownership of the Black Hills and further land and hunting rights in South Dakota, Wyoming, and Montana. The Powder River country was to be henceforth closed to all whites, and the treaty specified that in addition, the country north of the North Platte River and east of the summits of the Bighorn Mountains shall be held and considered to be unceded Indian territory. No white person or persons shall be permitted to settle upon or occupy any portion of the same, or without the consent of the Indians first had and obtained to pass through the same. The story of the federal effort to force the native tribes to cede the Black Hills for white mining and settlement, to remove those natives from their lands, and to force right-of-way for the Northern Pacific Railroad across buffalo hunting grounds, is one of military force, violence, deceit, cynical manipulation, and total disregard for either legal rights or human rights of Native people. Or you could go back as far as the late 15th century, when the Catholic Church in Europe promulgated the doctrine of discovery. This papal decision provided that any Christian ruler was entitled to take possession of any lands not already under the jurisdiction of any other Christian ruler, and to consider the non-Christian inhabitants of that place essentially as enemy combatants in a state of war, to be killed, enslaved, dispossessed, and perhaps, if possible, converted to Christianity at the will of whoever discovered them. Fast forward to 1823, when the United States Supreme Court, as articulated by Chief Justice John Marshall, adopted this same doctrine as having justified the English colonizing of North America and continuing to authorize Christian Americans to take possession of lands notwithstanding the occupancy of the natives who were heathens, and at the same time admitting the prior title of any Christian people who may have made a previous discovery. According to this policy, the term unoccupied lands referred to the lands in America which, when discovered, were occupied by Indians but unoccupied by Christians. This legal precedent has never been reversed in federal law and remains part of the basis for decisions about Native American tribal matters to this day. This heap of trouble did not arise recently, and it's not over yet. It's also possible that the place to start is in 1781, when James Watt patented the first steam-powered engine. It was the innovation of a practical way for turning the stored energy of fossil fuels, specifically coal and oil, into useful power that enabled the evolution of Homo colossus, as we discussed last week. Since that time, the species Homo sapiens has evolved this new subspecies that is dependent for its survival success on prosthetic tools and devices that consume the non-renewing detritus of long-ago plant and animal populations of the earth. The trouble with being a detrivore, which is what you and I and all the citizens of developed nations are, is that we have massive population increases when our nutrient of choice is readily available. This is known biologically as exuberance or bloom, followed by rapid die-off whenever that resource is exhausted. And we have just enough self-awareness to have become nervous lately about what exactly happens to us and our grandchildren and our cherished lifestyles when the fossil fuels run out. We can watch the algae bloom in a pond in response to an annual influx of nutrients and see it die off again when its exuberance has consumed the feast, which will not occur again for many months, and not feel bad until we start to understand the similarity of our own situation to that of the hapless phytoplankton. With this image uncomfortably in our minds, what are we to do now? One possibility, surely, is to begin to imagine creatively how we might sustain the genus Homo colossus on the basis of something other than the detritus nutrients of fossil fuels. Can we move from being an obligate detrivore, that is, a creature that has no choice about consuming non-renewable resources, to supplying our need for power in some more sustainable way? This may or may not be physically possible on this planet in the long run. And even if it is, we may or may not figure out how to do it before we exhaust our current resources and our die-off begins. Another creative possibility would be to make an effort to accelerate and steer the evolutionary process towards something that succeeds Homo colossus in this genetic niche that we have carved out. Perhaps we can find a satisfying lifestyle that can be sustained with renewable energy sources, enabling us to move beyond the bloom and bust cycles of a detrivore species. Less appealing, but not hard to envision, would be a de-evolution back to Homo sapiens, by which we lose the survival abilities once developed on the basis of intense energy consumption. But there is another, even less useful choice, and it is the one exemplified by DAPL and much of the fossil fuel industry in general. This is the frantic and irrational behavior of the addict, whose felt need is so imperious that they have minimal control over their own self-destructive actions and little or no conscience regarding the damage done to others. Just as the tobacco industry once knew quite well that its products were both addictive and cancer-causing, the petroleum and coal industries of today are well aware that the resources they are exploiting are finite. No one is in a better position to understand this than the corporations with the most investment and expertise. Yet such is the demand of our culture that there is money to be made by assuaging our denial, regardless of the risks to our immediate safety or our long-term well-being. Oil tankers run aground and foul oceans and beaches. Oil-carrying trains derail and burn, polluting and destroying communities. Pipelines rupture, spilling hundreds of thousands of gallons of toxic crude oil across the landscape and into the aquifers. It is the same destruction as drug culture, only writ large and legal. And still we drive our recreational vehicles and fly around the world in jets and ship raw materials and manufactured goods back and forth across the ocean in mammoth diesel-powered ships. To make any meaningful change in our cultural dependence upon the drug of fossil fuels will require a huge adjustment in both thinking and acting. The kind of humility and determination that it takes for any addict to get and stay sober. This is far from over. We have barely begun to consider whether we are going to make any effort to avert the die-off or other calamities that lie ahead if we take the addict's way and change nothing. Meanwhile, the events at Standing Rock shimmer on the horizon like an invitation to a world of imagined possibilities. What if? What if there were people who felt responsible for the well-being of the earth and future generations? What if governments decided to keep their promises even when it was not entirely convenient? What if there was something more important to protect than corporate profits? What if people were educated in the traditions of respect, nonviolence, reverence, self-awareness, even prayer, in order to be ready for effective resistance? What if white allies came when they were invited and didn't take over but followed the leadership of those at risk? What if ancient enemies discovered common ground? What if we paid attention to events that people on the ground were showing us and telling us, rather than to the mainstream media? What if a lot of people were willing to put themselves in harm's way for the sake of a principle and an ideal? What if making sure that everyone could eat together and sing together and stay warm took priority over proving how wrong others are and how righteous you are? It was in the wake of the arrival beginning last Sunday on December 4th of an estimated 4,000 military veterans intending to bear witness and protect the protesters that the Corps of Engineers announced that the easement needed for the pipeline to cross federally controlled land underneath Lake Oahe would not be granted, and that additional environmental impact statements would be required before construction can resume. Before the vets, tribal water protectors, and outside allies began to depart from the camp, many of the veterans, led by organizer Wes Clark Jr., made an emotional confession of historic military complicity in the oppression of Native Americans. "We fought you. We took your land. We signed treaties that we broke," acknowledged Clark, speaking as a representative before a group of tribal elders. "We stole minerals from your sacred hills. We blasted the faces of our presidents onto your sacred mountain. Then we took still more land. Then we took your children and we tried to eliminate your language. We didn't respect you. We polluted your earth. We've hurt you in so many ways. We've come to say that we are sorry," he said, bowing his head. "We are at your service, and we beg for your forgiveness." Lakota medicine man Leonard Crow Dog gently placed his hand on Clark's head, and his fellow Sioux spiritual leaders offered prayers and songs of cleansing and forgiveness. As Crow Dog laid his hand on Clark's bowed head, he told the hushed hall, "Let me say a few words of accepting forgiveness. World peace." World peace, he repeated quietly, and suddenly someone else shouted, "World peace," and cheers rose up across the cavernous auditorium. Well, we don't have world peace, not yet. This isn't over, not by a long way. It's likely that the Trump administration will seek to reanimate the pipeline project, particularly so since both the governor of North Dakota and Trump himself have potentially lucrative investments in DAPL and its parent corporations. However, that will be easier to say than do, given what is now the legal status of the process. It is likely to be mired in the courts for some time to come, regardless of federal agendas. The tribal water protectors and their allies are not going away. In fact, the Unitarian Universalist yurt, Y-U-U-R-T, may be one of the structures allowed to remain at the campsite with a skeleton staff until spring for the sake of ongoing watchfulness. It's not clear yet, but this is a possibility depending on what the tribe's leadership requests. One of the things that Standing Rock has taught us all is about ways to follow the leadership of people at risk, rather than having allies from far away come barging in and throw their accustomed privilege around. The other thing that we know now, more than ever before, is that resistance is not futile. It is anything but futile. Even if it did not succeed in its immediate object, resistance is the living breath of hope. It is what has sustained the indigenous peoples of this land from generation to generation down the whole shameful history of broken promises, oppression, and genocide that Christian culture has inflicted on them. We've been fighting this fight our whole lives, and now there is no doubt in our minds that our generation can change the future, says Aaron Wise of the International Indigenous Youth Council. We know that the next presidency stands to jeopardize our work, but we are by no means backing down. We will continue protecting everywhere we go, and we will continue to stand for all our relations. We say Lila Wopila, many thanks, to everyone who has supported the resurgence of indigenous nations. This is just the beginning. Like I said, it's not over yet, not nearly. Let's stand and sing together.
And we are singing, singing for our lives.
extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fires of commitment. For all these we carry in our minds and hearts until we are together again. Hold on to what is good, even if it is a handful of earth. Hold on to what you believe, even if it is a tree which stands by itself. Hold on to what you must do, even if it is a long way from here. Hold on to my hand, even when I have gone away from you. Go in peace.